is up, everybody? It is Alex from Heavy New York calling from the quarantine zone again, and this time we are here with Mack of the CEO. Thank you so much for being here today, man. It's great for you to be here.
Well, I appreciate you having us. We're excited to be here.
Yeah, it's great to have you here. We got the new album Redemption coming out very soon, and you released the title track Redemption, featuring Vince from Sevendust. Great collaboration right there. Could this first title track that you released maybe serve as a good representation of what the entirety of Redemption is going to sound like, or is that just the tip of the iceberg?
Yeah, I think it's probably the tip of the iceberg. The cool thing about the record and the band that itself is that it's made up of a lot of different guys from different age groups. So you can imagine the influences that we would have. I mean, Vince and I are in our early 50s. So we come from like an older school, Van Halen, Foreigner, Kiss type situation, and the drummer's a younger guy, and the two guitar players are younger guys. So you can imagine the influences that everybody brings to the table. So I think that's reflected really well in what you hear on the record is that it's got a lot of the more modern heavy metal feel to it, definitely the production of it, and then it's got some more of the classic melodies and harmonies and that kind of thing that you would hear in some of the older tracks. So I think it's a pretty good mix of that.
That's awesome. It's like the bridge between what you would hear on like classic rock radio and Sirius XM Octane in a way.
Exactly right. So I think if you think about it, hopefully there's some stuff on there that the younger crowd and the Octane crowd would love, and then even some of the older folks that would like more of a classic rock feel. So to your point, yeah.
Yeah. Was that always like a preconceived idea that happened, or did the sound of the CEO not really come in until you started recruiting other bandmates and all that?
It's like making gumbo. You just throw in a bunch of ingredients and it tastes the way that it tastes. So I mean, we certainly wasn't a design that way, but it came out that way, and it was a really cool collaborative type environment. Everybody in the band writes music and writes songs, so we didn't have an issue with material. We had a lot of material. And then you look to somebody like our producer, Elvis Pascat, and he basically just helps narrow it down, give it more of a uniform feel and that type of thing. And then, as a debut album goes, typically you find out what works well for you, where you gravitate to, the types of sounds and songs that kind of fit what it is that you're doing. So I think, definitely by the second album, we'll have a real good idea of what the CEO sound is.
Yeah, I'm probably asking this way too far in advance right now, being that Redemption isn't even out to the public yet. But do you think that maybe this is going to be the direction that you're going to want to pursue in for future works and future songs, or do you want to maybe experiment a little bit further?
No, I think we've got a pretty good formula going right now. We have about 10 or 15 new songs that are already written, and I can tell you, if you like this particular album, you're really going to like album number two. They were a little more dialed in on this one as it relates to the formula for writing these songs. I don't necessarily think the sound or the direction will change. It's just that we've just got a little better idea of what we're doing and the process. So it should be a little more, I guess, cohesive, if you would.
Yeah. Do you and working with Vince from Sevendust, because I do see a lot of like, I think people who like Sevendust will definitely appreciate the CEO as well, but I also do notice some differences in it as well. I feel like Sevendust is a little bit more like very more emotionally driven. It thrives a little bit more on like this a little bit more angsty, and I don't say that as in negative by any stretch of the means. But then you have like then I feel like your music has a lot more groove to it. It's a lot more like in your face and raw. But working with Vince, did he bring in some new stuff to the CEO that maybe you didn't have previously?
Well, Vince is he's a really groovy bass player. I think that's probably his natural instinct. It's like I can't speak to how they write in Sevendust, but as far as what he brought to us, I mean, we all naturally gravitate, to that thing that kind of makes you swing a little bit. So I think there's some songs in there that are just straight up, 2x4 rockers, but for the most part, we gravitate to that swing feel. And I don't know if it's coming from the drummer, but it's definitely coming from Vince and even myself, who was grew up a big funk fan. I was always into bands like Rick James and Daz Band, the Gap Band, that kind of thing. So we appreciate that the hard rock and the punch in the face, but we do it with a nice little groove to it.
Yeah, funny little. I have a funny little story about Vince. Actually, one of my closest friends, Sevendust, is her favorite band, and we went to see them at PlayStation Theater. And Vince is always the funny guy in the band,
Yes.
yeah. But he was throwing picks off the stage left and right, like Ingve Malmsteen, and he once threw one like across the stage. We were at the barrier, and I was like vibing out, and his pick flew, and I'm not even kidding, right into my mouth, like it almost went down my throat. So.
That's classic. Yeah, and I'm telling you, he is like that as it relates to being around us 24/7. Always a good time, always a sweetheart, nicest guy on the planet. A lot of times, I don't know if you met certain rock stars, and I give him a hard time about being a rock star, but you set these guys and, you expect them to, maybe be different, but, Vince he's just a good old country boy like the rest of us, and we have a blast when we're together.
Yeah.
And, and
Yeah.
he'll kick your ass in pool, by the way. So he's
In,
that good.
in pool?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm a pool shark, so oh, man,
Well, you need to play with him because he schooled all of us the whole weekend. The whole time we were in the studio.
I got to reach out to the PR and see if maybe I can make that like a
Absolutely
special
right.
heavy New York exclusive.
Fishing and pool. Don't go up against him on either one.
All right, well, Stevie Wonder could do a better job fishing than I can, so I'll give him that.
Amen, brother.
But going to your songwriting process as a vocalist, there's two things I feel like vocalists have, the burden. I don't want to call it a burden, but have to focus on. There's the vocal range, and I'm very impressed with the vocal range that was incorporated in Redemption. But then there's also lyrics that are involved too. Have you ever like had maybe like a lyrical idea or a lyrical concept that could influence the sound of the music itself, or have you always needed the music before you could think of lyrics?
Typically, it's the music comes first, but I do a lot of lyric writing or lyric ideas throughout the time, and I just kind of like a notebook and like, hey, that's a cool title, or I really like that line, or there's something about this that I think I can build off of. So I've got a notebook full of ideas. So when they bring the songs to me, and the first thing that you do is like, what does the song feel like to you? I mean, does it have is it angry? Is it sad? Is it funky and groovy? I mean, and then you go back, then you start to, sing the melodies, and then that's when you reach out to your notebook at that point and say, okay, what works? What kind of ideas does it fit with the mood of the music, and where are we trying to go with it? So for us, it almost always starts with the music, and then we'll kind of marry up the lyric writing and stuff a little later in the process.
Have you ever had like the best lyrics ever, but then they're always like one syllable over or under like the arrangements of each song?
All the stinking time, and that's the best part about working with somebody like Elvis Basquiat, who's a musical genius. I mean, I'm in there singing, what I think is, Bob Dylan type lyrics, and he's looking at me going, that's cool, but you got to cut this thing down. This is the beat of the music, or we got to keep it simple that people remember it. And he's got a real good idea of what the song is supposed to be even before we do. So it's great to have something like that, and somebody you bounce ideas off of, and who sees the whole song and can come to you and go, "That's cool. Let's lose 3 or 4 syllables, if you would, and go from there." So,
Oh, that's got to be heartbreaking sometimes, though. No.
well, it's funny you say that because I remember one line of one song in particular. It was the second single that we just put out, "Behind These Eyes," and I had that whole melody written for that whole song, and I was really proud of it. And there was a line in the chorus that follows the drum beat almost perfectly, and it's kind of a lot of country music artists are doing it. So certainly a lot of the R&B rap artists are doing it. They're really just kind of, it's a staccato kind of married up with the beat. And so I came in there with that, thinking that man, we're gonna floor these guys with this, and he's like, whoa. Slow down there, cowboy. Let's get this right. So we had to pare it back a little bit. It was a little heartbreaking at the time, but then when you hear it on playback, you're going, that's why he's the boss sitting in the big chair. He gets it. So
Yeah. Well, the producer I've always said is the fifth Beatle, the sixth Beatle. If you're in Slipknot, the 10th Beatle. So you gotta you need. It's always good to have that extra input.
fact, and those guys are worth their weight in gold, and he certainly is.
Yeah, definitely. Do you find it easier to maybe come up with ideas in terms of vocal melodies or ranges when you're like in the company of your fellow bandmates? Like, is that where you find it easier to come up with, or alone isolation? I mean, it's always been a great fuel for creativity. Do you prefer to be more alone when it comes to coming up with lyrics or vocal melodies?
It's weird. I write a lot of lyrics and vocal melodies on the treadmill. I've got my headphones on, I'm running, and I'm not really thinking about, what's going on in the world necessarily. And I know I must look kind of silly to some of the other gym members as I'm over there humming on the treadmill. So I write a lot of stuff there. And this last time, the guys were in the studio and they were writing music, and then they would shoot it to me later in the day. It's my turn the next day, so I'm at the pool at the hotel, having to write some stuff down at that point. But to your point, definitely, kind of an isolated into myself, kind of, you know, controlled environment, if you would, and that way I can really concentrate on what it is that I'm doing and what we're writing.
It's funny you mentioned that. I have a lot of friends who are like fitness freaks and like gym nerds, but they're also very like artistic, and and they tell me that like working out a lot, it does like provide a lot of artistic clarity and a lot of artistic inspiration. And like you said, running on the treadmill, I mean, that's like it's a static journey in a way where like you feel like you're running across the earth, but you're in the same spot. It almost feels like you're stagnant, but you're also running towards an alternate universe. So it's really cool how many people I've gotten sources of inspiration from multiple sources from other musicians. They tell me they get it in the shower, they get it at the supermarket, they get it while they're driving. I'd imagine inspiration sometimes strikes at very inconvenient times, right?
Very inconvenient times. And sometimes if you're lazy, you have to convince yourself that it wasn't a cool lyric idea or melody idea. Or you have to get up and go grab a pen or, one of those voice recorders, that kind of thing. So if it's really good, I don't care if it's 3 in the morning, I got to get up and go write it down or sing it into my phone. And hopefully the next day when I'm awake, I still think it's cool at that point. So, but yeah, you're absolutely right.
Yeah, I was like everybody was so excited when Bruce Dickinson was flying that Iron Maiden plane, but like I was terrified. Like I hope he doesn't think of any good ideas like as he's approaching the tarmac or something like that.
He just hit autopilot and then start writing, right? But yeah,
Yeah.
you're absolutely right.
I wouldn't be surprised if like all those controllers in that cockpit was actually just a studio, like a home studio.
That's one of the things we've been talking about, lately is, where does the inspiration for a lot of the, lyrical content come from? And, my simple answer is, just personal experiences. And I wish that I could write, you know, stories like Iron Maiden writes stories in their songs, but I'm just not that creative. You think about some of their tunes and the way they had, write stuff, and I'm like, nah, I wish I could write, theater
Yeah.
like that, but it is just
Anything,
can't.
anything is possible though. Never say never. Uh,
There you go.
these songs that I've been hearing so far are great. So I think that there's a lot more doors that could open up in the future.
Cool. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, and I kind of wanted to ask like a silly question. Kind of going back, I'm very interested to see like the difference in like age range in the band and stuff like that. Because like,
Yeah.
have you discovered any new bands that you were really into? To your younger bandmates. I mean, my dad is in his 50s. I can't get him to listen to any of the bands I listen to for shit. So like, I was curious to have you discovered any newer bands?
Well, it's funny for me, growing up in the 70s and 80s, and you're thinking that that's the epitome of rock and music right there. And then, as soon as, the grunge thing hit, it was all over, and it was, death to all music. And I basically just skipped the 90s altogether. And it wasn't until later that you started to pay attention to, current and modern rock and roll. And you're like, man, this is every bit as good as what I listened to back then, but sonically better. So yeah, I took a decade off or at least, but then I started to pay attention. And of course, it does help to have the younger guys in the band who's, constantly, not only they influenced by it and they're playing this type of music, but they're turning you on to it. So it was, from Shinedown to Breaking Benjamin to, and our drummer's really into Periphery and bands like that. And so they're constantly bringing stuff to us, and we're thinking, oh man, a lot of this new music is not only valid but damn good.
Yeah.
I have Octane on all the time. That's what I listen to.
Yeah, I mean, for my dad, I mean, my dad's the classic rock and roll guy, but I'm like the satanic black metal guy. So I'm like, hey, Dad, you want to listen to like Mayhem, or how about if I show you this band called Dying Fetus, or Infant Annihilator,
Yeah.
or Decrepit Birth? You want to hear any of those? He's like, let's stick with King's X.
Yeah, you got to ease him into that one, and I can imagine that's a tall jump right there.
Hey, never say never. I hope to bring my dad to a summer slaughter festival one day. Yep.
Love it.
All right, ready for the most difficult and final question of the interview?
Yes.
All right.
Hit me.
How do you know when a song is done?
How do you know when the song is done? When the producer says it's
I knew that was coming. I knew that was coming. You shouted out your producer. I knew it. Like,
when he says it's done, that's when it's done. Otherwise, keep at it, brother. So
all right, quick, concrete answer. I'll take it. I'll take it.
there you go.
Predictable, but I'll take it. So, before we go, I want to thank you so much for your time today. Is there just anything else you would like to promote for the CEO with the release of Redemption coming soon? Can we be expecting to see the CEO out on the road sometime?
Yeah, obviously, Vince and the Sevendust guys are out on the road right now. They're going to be out there in June, July, August, and probably into September. So the earliest that we would probably do something is maybe an album release party towards the beginning of fall, and then at that point we'll have a chance to hook up with some shows, with some of these other acts right after that. So we're guessing late fall or early winter you'll see us out there.
Awesome. Hope to see you in New York. But thank you all.
Love to be there.
Thank you all so much, everybody. We are here with the CEO. Be sure to pick up Redemption when it comes out. This is Alex from Heavy New York, and we will see you next time.
Thanks, Alex. Rock and roll, bud.